The champagne flutes clinked like tiny funeral bells around the mahogany table, and I should have known right then that this birthday dinner would be my last supper as Fiona's husband. But hindsight's a cruel teacher, isn't it? At the time, I was just Ethan Mallory, 41 years old, trying to make conversation with people who looked at me like I'd tracked mud across their Persian rugs. "So, Ethan," drawled Sabrina, Fiona's best friend since prep school, her voice dripping with that particular brand of condescension that only comes from old money. "How's the construction business?" She said construction like it was a communicable disease. I took a sip of wine that probably cost more than most people's car payments and smiled. "Can't complain. Just finished renovating the Henderson summer house up in Martha's Vineyard. You know, the one with the 12 bedrooms and the infinity pool overlooking the ocean." Fiona's father, Charles, leaned forward with interest. "The Hendersons? I play golf with Robert Henderson every Thursday. He mentioned something about finding an excellent contractor." "That would be me," I said, feeling a small surge of pride. "Took 8 months, but we restored the original 1920s charm while adding all the modern conveniences they wanted." For a moment, I thought I saw something like respect flicker in Charles's eyes. But then Fiona laughed, that sharp, brittle sound that had been grating on my nerves more and more lately. "Oh, Daddy, don't encourage him," she said, her voice carrying across the private dining room at the Millbrook Country Club. "Ethan likes to make his little projects sound more important than they are. It's sweet, really." The table fell silent. I felt heat creep up my neck, but I kept my voice level. "Little projects? Fiona, that renovation was featured in Architectural Digest last month." "Was it?" She tilted her head, her blonde hair catching the candlelight. "I must have missed that issue. I was probably too busy reading about actual successful people." Sabrina giggled behind her hand. Lucas Brandt, who'd somehow materialized at our table despite not being invited, smirked into his scotch. I'd been wondering how he'd ended up here, this 34-year-old trust fund baby who called himself a serial entrepreneur, but had never actually built anything in his life. "Fiona," I said quietly, "maybe we should..." "Should what?" Her voice was getting louder now, drawing glances from other tables. "Should pretend that you're something you're not? Should I lie to my friends and family about what my husband actually does for a living?" "I'm a licensed contractor with my own business," I said, my jaw clenching. "I employ 12 people full-time, and we grossed $2.3 million last year." "Oh, how blue-collar," Sabrina murmured. Fiona's mother, Patricia, cleared her throat delicately. "Perhaps we should order dessert." "No, let's talk about this," Fiona interrupted, her cheeks flushed with wine and something uglier. "Let's talk about how my husband thinks swinging a hammer makes him successful. Let's talk about how he drives a pickup truck to events like this, because he's too cheap to buy a proper car. That truck is a custom Ford Raptor that costs more than most luxury sedans," I said through gritted teeth. "It's still a truck, Ethan. Do you see any other trucks in the valet area? Do you see any other men here with calluses on their hands and dirt under their fingernails?" I looked down at my hands automatically. I'd scrubbed them raw before coming here, but she was right about the calluses. They were honest calluses, earned through years of hard work, but in this room full of soft-handed aristocrats, they might as well have been scarlet letters. "At least I work for my money," I said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Fiona's face went white, then red. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I don't spend my days in HR meetings gossiping about other people's lives while contributing nothing meaningful to the world." Lucas leaned forward, his perfect teeth gleaming. "Hey now, Ethan, that's a bit harsh, don't you think? Fiona's work is very important." I turned to look at him, this pretty boy with his slicked back hair and his Armani suit. "I'm sorry. Who are you again? I don't remember inviting you to my wife's birthday dinner." "Lucas is a friend," Fiona said quickly. "A good friend who understands the value of ambition." "Ambition?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the kind of ambition that has him showing up uninvited to family dinners? The kind that has him texting you at all hours of the night? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, could see the shock on Patricia's face, the calculation in Charles's eyes. Fiona's voice, when it came, was ice cold. You're being paranoid and embarrassing. Am I? Then why don't you show everyone those texts, right now? Put your phone on the table and let's all see what kind of friendship you two have. I don't have to prove anything to you, she hissed. No, you don't, I agreed, standing up slowly. But you just did anyway. I looked around the table at these people I'd been trying to impress for 3 years of marriage. Patricia with her pearls and her judgment, Charles with his golf buddies and his old money snobbery, Sabrina with her cruel little smiles, and Lucas, sitting there like he owned the place, like he owned my wife. You know what, Fiona? You're absolutely right. I am blue collar. I do drive a truck. I do work with my hands. And apparently that makes me not good enough for you and your friends. Ethan, sit down, she said, but there was panic creeping into her voice now. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I laughed again, louder this time. Lady, I haven't even gotten started. But instead of escalating, instead of giving her the public meltdown she seemed to want, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I reached into my wallet, pulled out $300 bills, and placed them on the table. Happy birthday, Fiona. Dinner's on me. Enjoy your cake. And then I walked out, leaving my wife of 3 years sitting there with her mouth open, her parents mortified, and her friend Lucas looking like he'd just won the lottery. The house felt different when I got home that night. Colder somehow, despite the fact that I'd left the heat on. I stood in our kitchen, my kitchen, since I'd renovated it myself, and poured 3 fingers of bourbon. Good bourbon, not the cheap stuff, because contrary to what Fiona's friends thought, I could afford the finer things in life. I just chose not to waste them on people who didn't appreciate them. The bourbon burned going down, but it was a clean burn. Honest. Unlike everything else in my life lately. My phone buzzed. A text from Travis, my foreman, and the closest thing I had to a best friend these days. How'd the fancy dinner go, boss? I typed back. About as well as a root canal performed by a blind dentist. That bad? Want to grab a beer? I was about to say yes when I heard Fiona's BMW pull into the driveway. The engine cut off, but she didn't come inside right away. I could see her through the kitchen window, sitting in the driver's seat, talking on her phone. Animated conversation, lots of hand gestures, probably calling Sabrina to dissect the evening's drama. When she finally came in, she was carrying her heels in one hand and had that particular look on her face that I'd learned to dread, the one that said she was gearing up for a fight. We need to talk, she announced. Do we? I thought you made your feelings pretty clear at dinner. She set her purse down on the granite countertop I'd installed 2 years ago, back when I still thought this marriage was worth saving. You humiliated me tonight. I humiliated you? I turned to face her fully. Fiona, you spent the entire evening telling everyone how worthless I am. You made jokes about my job, my truck, my hands. You brought your boyfriend to your birthday dinner and expected me to just sit there and take it. Lucas is not my boyfriend. Right. He's just a friend who happens to show up everywhere you are, who texts you constantly, and who looks at you like he's already planning what he's going to do to you later. She crossed her arms over her chest. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Then prove it. Show me your phone. I'm not going to... Show me your phone, Fiona, right now. If there's nothing going on, you shouldn't have any problem with that. For a moment, I thought she might actually do it. Her hand moved toward her purse, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was being paranoid, like she said. Then she stopped. I don't have to prove anything to you. The fact that you don't trust me says everything about the state of our marriage. The state of our marriage? I laughed bitterly. Our marriage died the first time you flirted with another man in front of me and then got angry when I called you out on it. Tonight was just the funeral. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. The mask slipped, just for a second, and I caught a glimpse of something cold and calculating underneath. Maybe you're right, she said quietly. Maybe this marriage is over. Maybe I do deserve better than a man who's so insecure he can't handle his wife having successful friends. Successful friends? Is that what we're calling Lucas now? Lucas has built 3 companies from the ground up. He's worth more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime. He drives a Tesla, he lives in a penthouse, he travels the world. That's success, Ethan. That's ambition. That's what I thought I was getting when I married you. Each word was a knife twist, perfectly aimed to hit where it would hurt most. What you thought you were getting. What exactly did you think you were getting, Fiona? Because I was pretty upfront about who I was and what I did for a living. I thought you had potential. I thought you'd want to grow, to become more than just some contractor. I thought you'd want to build something bigger. I did build something bigger. I built a business that employs 12 families. I built a reputation for quality work that has clients calling me from 3 states away. I built this house, with these hands you're so ashamed of. It's not enough, she said simply. Those 3 words hung between us like a death sentence. It's not enough, I repeated slowly. I'm not enough. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I finished my bourbon and set the glass down carefully on the counter. You know what, Fiona? You're absolutely right. You do deserve better. You deserve someone who can give you the lifestyle you want, who can take you to fancy parties and buy you expensive jewelry and never embarrass you in front of your friends. For a moment, she looked almost hopeful. But here's the thing, I continued. You also deserve someone who can trust you. Someone who doesn't have to wonder where you are when you're working late. Someone who doesn't have to worry about finding strange men at family dinners. And I can't be that person anymore. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. I'm saying this conversation is over, and so are we. I walked past her toward the stairs, but her voice stopped me. If you leave me, Ethan, you'll regret it. I know people in this town. Important people. I can make your life very difficult. I turned back to look at her, this woman I'd once loved enough to marry, and felt nothing but pity. You know what, Fiona? You already have. That night I slept in the guest room, and when I woke up the next morning, I found something that changed everything. Fiona had left her purse on the kitchen counter in her hurry to get upstairs and continue our fight. The purse was open, and I could see 2 phones inside. 2 phones. One was her regular iPhone, the one I knew about. The other was a smaller Android device I'd never seen before. I stood there for a long moment, staring at those phones, knowing that whatever I found on that second device would either prove my suspicions or make me the paranoid husband she'd accused me of being. In the end, curiosity won. The Android wasn't password protected. The first thing I saw when I opened it was a text thread between Fiona and Lucas that went back 6 months. 6 months. The messages started innocuous enough. Work gossip, complaints about boring meetings. But they quickly escalated into something else entirely. Flirting, photos, plans to meet at hotels when I was working out of town. And then, about 3 months ago, the tone changed again. Lucas, when are you going to leave him? Fiona, soon. I need to be smart about it, make sure I get what I deserve. Lucas, half of everything, right? That's what Sabrina's lawyer told her when she divorced Richard. Fiona, half of everything plus alimony. He makes good money, even if he is embarrassing. The business alone is worth at least $3 million. Lucas, and then we can be together properly. No more sneaking around. Fiona, no more pretending to be happy with a man who thinks getting his hands dirty is an accomplishment. I scrolled through months of messages, each one a fresh betrayal. They'd been planning this. The humiliation at dinner wasn't spontaneous, it was orchestrated. She'd been trying to provoke me into doing something stupid, something that would make me look like the bad guy in a divorce. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the cold, calculating way they discussed destroying my life. The casual cruelty with which they dismissed everything I'd worked for. There were photos too. Intimate photos that made my stomach turn. Videos that I deleted without watching. And then, at the very bottom of the message thread, I found something that made my blood run cold. A detailed plan. They'd researched divorce law. They knew exactly how to maximize what Fiona could take from me. They'd even discussed ways to damage my business reputation to make sure I couldn't recover financially after the divorce. They wanted to destroy me completely. I sat there in my kitchen, holding this phone that contained the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt and anger I'd been carrying crystallized into something harder, colder, something dangerous. If Fiona wanted to play games, if she wanted to destroy my life for her own entertainment, then maybe it was time she learned what it felt like to be on the receiving end. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every photo, every detail of their plan. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went upstairs to shower. When I came back down, Fiona was in the kitchen making coffee, her purse closed and sitting on the counter where she'd left it. "Good morning," she said, without looking at me. "Morning," I replied. She turned around, and I saw that she'd put on makeup to cover what looked like the remnants of tears. "About last night." "Don't worry about it," I said. "You were right. About everything." She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "I was. Yeah, I'm not ambitious enough for you. I'm not successful enough. I don't fit into your world, and I never will." "Ethan, It's okay, Fiona. Really. I get it now." I poured myself a cup of coffee and headed toward the door. "Where are you going?" "To work. I've got a business to run." As I drove away in my truck, my embarrassing, blue-collar truck, I caught a glimpse of her in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway, looking confused. She had no idea what was coming, but she was about to find out. 3 days later, I was sitting in the office of Margaret Chen, the best divorce attorney in the state, watching her flip through printouts of Fiona's secret messages with the kind of professional satisfaction that probably cost $500 an hour. "This is quite comprehensive," Margaret said, adjusting her glasses. "Your wife and her friend have essentially done half of my work for me. They documented everything, didn't they?" "Oh yes, the affair, the financial planning, even their strategy for the divorce proceedings. It's almost like they wanted to get caught." I leaned back in the leather chair. "What are my options?" Margaret set the papers down and looked at me directly. "With evidence like this, you have several options. We could file for divorce on grounds of adultery, which in this state still carries some weight in asset division. We could also pursue a case for intentional infliction of emotional distress, given the calculated nature of their behavior. What would that look like in practical terms? Best case scenario, you keep the house, the business, and most of your assets. She might be entitled to some alimony, but given the adultery, it would be minimal. The business valuation they discussed, $3 million, that stays with you." I nodded slowly. "And worst case?" "Even worst case, you're looking at keeping 60 to 70% of everything. The evidence is simply too strong for her to claim she deserves half." It was more than I'd hoped for, but somehow it didn't feel like enough. Fiona and Lucas had spent months planning to destroy my life, to humiliate me publicly, and take everything I'd worked for. A divorce settlement, even a favorable one, felt like letting them off easy. "I need some time to think about it," I told Margaret. Of course, but don't wait too long. The longer you delay, the more opportunity she has to hide assets or create her own evidence. I left Margaret's office with a retainer agreement in my pocket and a decision to make. I could take the legal route, get my divorce, keep my money, and move on with my life. It was the smart play, the safe play. It was also the boring play. That evening, I met Travis at Murphy's, a dive bar on the outskirts of town that served honest beer to honest people. The kind of place where nobody cared if you had calluses on your hands. You look like someone ran over your dog, Travis said as I slid into the booth across from him. Worse, someone ran over my marriage. I told him everything. The dinner, the fight, the phone, the messages. Travis listened without interrupting, nursing his beer and occasionally shaking his head. Jesus, boss. That's cold, even for her. The worst part is how long they've been planning it. 6 months, Travis. 6 months of lying to my face while they plan to take everything. So what are you gonna do? Lawyer up and take her to court? I could. My attorney says I'd probably win big. But? I took a long pull of my beer. But that's what they're expecting. They've planned for a messy divorce. They've probably already figured out how to spin it, how to make me look like the bad guy. So what's the alternative? I was quiet for a moment, thinking about Fiona's words at dinner, about the way Lucas had smirked at me, about months of humiliation and betrayal. What if I told you I had a different kind of plan? Travis raised an eyebrow. What kind of plan? The kind that makes sure they get exactly what they deserve. I'm listening. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Fiona's whole world revolves around status, right? Her reputation, her social circle, her image. What if instead of just taking her money, I took all of that away too? How? By giving her exactly what she's been asking for, by letting her destroy herself. Over the next hour, I laid out my idea. It wasn't complicated, but it was thorough. And by the time I finished explaining it, Travis was grinning like a man who'd just been offered free tickets to the Super Bowl. Boss, that's either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. When do we start? The next morning, I called in sick to work, the first time I'd done that in 5 years, and drove to the Millbrook Country Club. I'd never been there during the day, and I was curious to see what Fiona's world looked like when I wasn't around to embarrass her. It looked exactly like I'd expected. Perfectly manicured lawns, pristine tennis courts, and a parking lot full of luxury cars driven by people who'd never worked a day in their lives. I parked my truck right between a Mercedes and a BMW and walked into the clubhouse like I owned the place. The hostess at the restaurant looked at me like I'd wandered in from a construction site, which, technically, I had. Can I help you? I'm looking for my wife, Fiona Mallory. She mentioned she might be having lunch here today. The hostess consulted her reservation book. Mrs. Mallory. Yes, she has a standing reservation for Thursdays at noon. Table 12. I checked my watch. 11:45. Perfect. Could you seat me at a table where I can see table 12? I'd like to surprise her. 15 minutes later, I was sitting at a corner table with a clear view of the dining room when Fiona walked in. She wasn't alone. Lucas was with her, of course, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine in his perfectly tailored suit. But there were 2 other people I didn't recognize, a middle-aged woman with silver hair and a younger man who looked like he could be Lucas's brother. They were seated at table 12, and within minutes they were deep in animated conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see the body language, the way Lucas kept touching Fiona's hand, the way she laughed at everything he said, the way they completely ignored the other 2 people at their table. I took out my phone and started taking pictures. After about 20 minutes, the silver-haired woman stood up abruptly and walked out, looking furious. The younger man followed her, leaving Fiona and Lucas alone at the table. That's when things got interesting. Without the other 2 there to inhibit them, Fiona and Lucas became much more openly affectionate. Hand-holding turned into arm-stroking. Casual touches became lingering caresses. At one point, Lucas actually kissed her knuckles while she giggled like a schoolgirl. I got it all on camera. But the real jackpot came when they thought they were completely unobserved. Lucas pulled out his phone and showed Fiona something that made her laugh so hard she nearly spilled her wine. Then she pulled out her own phone, the secret android, and showed him something in return. They were sharing photos, probably intimate ones, based on Lucas's reaction. I zoomed in with my camera and captured them looking at the phones, their faces clearly visible, the devices clearly in frame. After lunch, they walked out to the parking lot together. I followed at a distance, still taking pictures. They stopped at Lucas's Tesla and had what looked like a very passionate goodbye, complete with the kind of kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. Then, Fiona got into her BMW and drove away, presumably back to work. Lucas got into his Tesla and headed in the opposite direction. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, reviewing the photos I'd taken. They were good, clear, well-lit, and absolutely damning. But they were just the beginning. Phase 1 of my plan was complete. Now it was time for Phase 2. I drove to Lucas's office building, a gleaming glass tower downtown that housed his consulting firm, along with about 50 other businesses that existed mainly to manage rich people's money. The building directory listed Brandt Consulting on the 15th floor. I took the elevator up and walked into a reception area that looked like it had been decorated by someone with more money than taste. "Can I help you?" asked the receptionist, a young woman who looked like she'd been hired more for her appearance than her skills. "I'm here to see Lucas Brandt. I don't have an appointment, but I think he'll want to see me." "Your name?" "Ethan Mallory." She made a phone call, spoke quietly for a moment, then looked up at me with confusion. "He says he doesn't know anyone by that name." I smiled. "Tell him I'm Fiona's husband." Another phone call. This time, the confusion was replaced by nervousness. "He'll see you now. Conference room B, down the hall to your right." Lucas was waiting for me in a glass-walled conference room that overlooked the city. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, probably trying to look casual and unbothered. It wasn't working. "Ethan, this is unexpected." "I bet it is." I sat down across from him without being invited. "Nice office. Business must be good." "It is. What can I do for you?" "Well, Lucas, I was hoping we could have a conversation about my wife." His face went carefully neutral. "What about her?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to one of the photos I'd taken at lunch, the one where he was kissing her hand. "I was hoping you could explain this." For just a moment, his composure cracked. Then he recovered, but I'd seen the fear in his eyes. "I don't know what you think you saw. I think I saw my wife having lunch with her boyfriend. I think I saw them acting like a couple. I think I saw them sharing intimate photos on their phones. You're mistaken." "Am I?" I scrolled to another photo, this one showing them kissing in the parking lot. "How about this one? Am I mistaken about this too?" Lucas stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked up at me. "What do you want?" "That's a very good question, Lucas. What do I want?" I leaned back in my chair, studying this man who'd been planning to destroy my life. "I want you to understand something. I know about the messages. I know about the hotels. I know about your little plan to help Fiona take me for everything I'm worth." His face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You and Fiona have been very thorough in your planning, very detailed, very documented." I could see him trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I could prove. "Here's what's going to happen, Lucas. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to delete her number from your phone. You're going to pretend she doesn't exist. And if I don't? If you don't, these photos are going to find their way to some very interesting people. Your business partners, for instance. Your clients. Your wife." "My wife?" I smiled. Oh, you didn't think I knew about Jennifer? About your lovely wife, who thinks you're working late all those nights when you're actually in hotel rooms with other men's wives? Lucas went from white to green. You can't. I can. I will, unless you disappear from Fiona's life completely and permanently. I stood up to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Lucas, if I find out you've warned Fiona about this conversation, the photos go public immediately. Are we clear? He nodded, looking like he might throw up. Excellent. Have a great day. I left him sitting in that conference room, staring at his reflection in the glass walls, probably wondering how his perfect plan had gone so wrong so quickly. But I wasn't done with him yet. Not even close. Phase 2 was complete. Time for Phase 3. The beauty of a well-executed plan is that once you set it in motion, it starts to take on a life of its own. People's own weaknesses and fears begin to work against them, and all you have to do is sit back and watch the dominoes fall. Lucas lasted exactly 4 days before he cracked. I know this because I'd installed a tracking app on Fiona's regular phone, not the secret Android, which she'd gotten rid of immediately after our kitchen conversation, but her everyday iPhone that she used for work and social media. It was surprisingly easy to do. I just borrowed it while she was in the shower and told her I needed to check the weather. The app showed me her location, her calls, her text messages. It was probably illegal, definitely unethical, and absolutely necessary. On Thursday afternoon, while I was supposedly at a job site installing crown molding in a client's dining room, I watched Fiona's location ping move from her office to Lucas's building. She stayed there for exactly 18 minutes, just long enough for him to tell her about my visit and show her the photos. Then her location ping moved to Murphy's Bar. Murphy's Bar. The dive bar where I'd met Travis just a week earlier. Fiona had never set foot in a place like Murphy's in her life, but apparently desperation makes people do things they never thought they'd do. I found her in the back booth, the same one where Travis and I had planned her downfall, nursing what looked like her third martini and staring at her phone like it might explode. "This is new," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I didn't know you even knew this place existed." She looked up at me, with eyes that were red-rimmed and furious. "You bastard." That's not very nice, Fiona, especially coming from someone who's been cheating on her husband for 6 months. How long have you known? Does it matter? She drained her martini and signaled the bartender for another. The bartender, a grizzled ex-biker named Pete, looked at her like she was an exotic animal that had wandered into his natural habitat. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I want to know why." "Why what?" "Why you married me if you were so ashamed of me. Why you stayed married to me if I was such an embarrassment. Why you didn't just leave instead of planning to destroy me." She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her empty glass. "Because leaving you wouldn't have been enough." "What does that mean?" "It means you never understood what you cost me, what being married to you cost me." "What did it cost you?" "Respect, status, the life I was supposed to have." She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw real emotion in her eyes instead of calculation. "Do you know what it's like to be the only woman in your social circle whose husband drives a truck? Do you know what it's like to have to explain why your husband can't join the country club because he doesn't meet the membership requirements?" "What membership requirements?" "The unwritten ones. The ones that say contractors and plumbers and electricians don't belong with doctors and lawyers and investment bankers." I felt a familiar surge of anger, but I kept my voice level. "So you decided to humiliate me instead of just divorcing me." "I decided to make sure you understood what rejection felt like. What it felt like to lose everything you cared about. By taking my money. By taking your precious business. By making sure everyone in town knew what kind of man you really were." "What kind of man am I, Fiona?" She leaned forward, and I could smell the gin on her breath. "The kind who spies on his wife, the kind who threatens innocent people, the kind who destroys relationships out of jealousy." Innocent people? Is that what you call Lucas? Lucas loves me. Lucas is using you, just like you were using me. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, Fiona, what exactly did Lucas say when you told him I knew about the affair? Her face went carefully blank, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. He said we needed to be more careful. Did he? Or did he say something else? Something about how this was getting too complicated? How maybe you should work things out with your husband? The silence stretched between us, and I knew I'd hit the mark. He's scared, Fiona. Scared of his wife finding out. Scared of his business partners finding out. Scared of losing everything he's worked for. Sound familiar? You don't know what you're talking about. I know that he hasn't returned your calls since Tuesday. I know that his secretary has been telling you he's in meetings every time you try to reach him. I know that you're sitting in a dive bar at 3 p.m. drinking martinis because the man you thought loved you has disappeared the moment things got difficult. She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won. I think I've learned something important about the woman I married. What's that? That she never existed in the first place. I stood up to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Fiona, I really did love you. I loved the woman I thought you were. But that woman was just an act, wasn't she? Just another performance for another audience. I left her sitting in that dive bar, staring into her martini glass, probably wondering how her perfect plan had collapsed so completely. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The next morning, I called Margaret Chen and told her to file the divorce papers. Are you sure you want to do this now? She asked. We could wait. Gather more evidence. I'm sure. File them today. What about the financial settlement? We haven't finished the asset evaluation. File them with the evidence we have. Let her lawyers worry about the rest. That afternoon, while Fiona was at work, a process server delivered the divorce papers to her office. I know this because Travis, who'd been doing some electrical work in the building next door, happened to be in the lobby when it happened. Boss, you should have seen it, he told me later. The whole office went quiet. Everyone was staring. She looked like she'd been hit by a truck. What did she do? Grabbed the papers and ran to the bathroom. Didn't come out for 20 minutes. And then? Then she came out, packed up her desk, and left. Word is, she took a leave of absence. That evening, Fiona came home looking like she'd aged 10 years in a single day. We need to talk, she said. I think we've talked enough. Ethan, please, I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Fiona, you spent 6 months planning to destroy my life. That's not a mistake. That's a campaign. I was angry. I was hurt. I felt like you didn't understand what I needed. What you needed was a divorce. What you wanted was revenge. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together every morning for 3 years, and put her head in her hands. What happens now? Now you find yourself a lawyer, a good one because you're going to need it. Are you going to destroy me, like you destroyed Lucas? I looked at her sitting there, this woman who'd shared my bed and my life and my dreams, and felt nothing but pity. I don't have to destroy you, Fiona. You've done that all by yourself. What do you mean? I mean that everything I know about your affair, everyone else is going to know too. Your parents, your friends, your co-workers, the country club gossips who love a good scandal, the HR department that frowns on employees who have affairs with married clients. Lucas isn't a client, isn't he? Doesn't his company use your firm's services? Didn't you have access to confidential information that might have been useful to someone planning to invest in his business? Her face went white. That's not... We never... Never what? Never mixed business with pleasure? Never shared information that should have stayed confidential? Never used your position to help your boyfriend's company? I want a lawyer. Good idea. You're going to need one. I left her sitting at that table and went upstairs to pack a bag. I'd already rented a furnished apartment across town, a temporary place where I could stay while the divorce played out. As I was loading my suitcase into the truck, Mrs. Barlow from next door appeared at her fence. "Moving out, Ethan?" Mrs. Barlow was 73 years old and knew everything that happened in our neighborhood within hours of it happening. She was also the biggest gossip in a 5-mile radius. "Just temporarily, Mrs. Barlow, until some legal matters get sorted out." "Legal matters?" Her eyes lit up with curiosity. "Divorce proceedings. Turns out Fiona's been having an affair with that Lucas fellow who drives the Tesla. You know, the one who's been coming around when I'm at work." Mrs. Barlow's mouth fell open. "No." "I'm afraid so. 6 months, apparently. They were planning to take me for everything in the divorce, but I found out about it." "That poor girl," Mrs. Barlow said, but she didn't sound sympathetic. She sounded excited. "How did you find out?" "Text messages, photos, the whole thing was documented." I climbed into my truck and started the engine. "You take care of yourself, Mrs. Barlow, and don't believe everything you hear about this situation. There are always 2 sides to every story." As I drove away, I could see her in my rearview mirror, already heading for her phone. By tomorrow morning, everyone in our social circle would know about Fiona's affair. By tomorrow afternoon, the story would have spread to the country club, the office buildings downtown, and every coffee shop and restaurant where the local elite gathered to gossip. Fiona's reputation, the thing she'd valued more than our marriage, would be in ruins, and I still wasn't done. 2 weeks after I moved out, Fiona called me at 6 in the morning, sobbing so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. "Ethan, please, you have to help me." "Help you with what?" "They fired me. They fired me yesterday. HR said there was a conflict of interest with the Lucas situation and they couldn't risk the liability." I sat up in bed in my temporary apartment, looking out at the gray morning sky. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To destroy my career?" "I didn't have to destroy your career, Fiona. You did that when you decided to sleep with a client. He wasn't a client when we started. But he became one, didn't he? His company signed a contract with your firm 3 months ago, right around the time your text messages started getting more serious about leaving me." The silence on the other end told me I was right. "How did you know about that?" "I know a lot of things, Fiona. I know that you used your access to confidential salary information to help Lucas identify potential investors. I know that you shared details about other clients' financial situations. I know that you violated about 6 different professional ethics rules. I never— Yes, you did. And now your former employer knows it too." More sobbing. "What am I supposed to do now? No one will hire me. Everyone knows about the affair. The country club revoked my membership. My parents won't even talk to me." "Your parents won't talk to you?" "They said I embarrassed the family. They said what I did to you was unforgivable." That surprised me. Charles and Patricia had never been my biggest fans, but apparently adultery crossed a line even for them. "I'm sorry about your parents." "Are you? Or is this all part of your plan?" I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen to make coffee. "Fiona, I didn't plan any of this. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your choices." "What do you mean?" "I mean that for 3 years, I covered for you. When you flirted with other men, I pulled you away before it went too far. When you said cruel things at parties, I made excuses for you. When you treated service workers badly, I apologized for you later. I spent our entire marriage protecting you from yourself. I never asked you to. No, you didn't. But I did it anyway, because I loved you, and I thought that's what marriage meant, protecting each other. And now? Now you get to see what your life looks like without that protection." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small and defeated. "Lucas won't see me anymore. I know. His wife found out about the affair. She's divorcing him too. I know that too. Did you tell her?" I took a sip of my coffee and considered the question. I didn't have to. Apparently, Lucas has a pattern of cheating, and Jennifer hired a private investigator months ago. The photos I took just confirmed what she already suspected. So you did send her the photos? I sent her copies, yes. I thought she deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. Just like you deserve to know what kind of woman you were married to. Something like that. Another long silence. What happens now, Ethan? With the divorce? Now we divide up our assets according to what the law allows. Since you committed adultery and there's extensive documentation of it, you'll get significantly less than you were planning on. How much less? My lawyer estimates you'll be entitled to about 20% of our joint assets, plus minimal alimony for maybe 2 years. 20%? That's not enough to live on. It's enough to get you started somewhere else. Maybe you can find work in another city where people don't know about the affair. I can't just start over. I'm 39 years old. I have a mortgage, car payments, credit card debt. You'll have to sell the house. The car too, probably. That house is my home. That house is our home. Was our home. Now it's just an asset to be divided. I could hear her crying again, but it sounded different now. Less manipulative, more genuine. I know you hate me, she said finally. I don't hate you, Fiona. You don't? No. Hating you would require me to still care about you. That seemed to hit her harder than anything else I'd said. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispered. Yes, you did. You planned every bit of this. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. I loved you once, in the beginning. Maybe you did. But you loved the idea of changing me more. I just wanted you to be more ambitious. I was ambitious. I built a successful business from nothing. I employed people, contributed to the community, made a good life for us. But it wasn't the right kind of ambition for you. I know that now. Do you? Or are you just saying that because everything fell apart? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I have to go, Fiona. I have a job to get to. Ethan, wait. What? I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry. For what exactly? For all of it. For the affair, for the humiliation, for trying to destroy you, for not appreciating what we had. I stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the city where I'd built my business and my reputation, where I'd thought I'd build a life with the woman I'd married. I appreciate the apology, Fiona, but it doesn't change anything. I know. Take care of yourself. I hung up and finished my coffee, then got dressed and drove to my current job site. I had crown molding to install and a bathroom to renovate. Honest work that would keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. But as I drove through town, I couldn't help but notice the changes. The way people looked at me differently now, with sympathy instead of pity, with respect instead of condescension. The way other business owners nodded when they saw me, acknowledging me as someone who'd handled a difficult situation with dignity. Word had gotten around about how the divorce was playing out, about how I'd discovered the affair, gathered evidence, and handled it through proper legal channels instead of doing something stupid or violent. In a town where everyone knew everyone else's business, that kind of restraint was noticed and appreciated. My phone rang as I was unloading tools from my truck. It was Margaret Chen. Ethan, I have good news. Fiona's lawyer wants to settle. What are the terms? Better than we expected. She's willing to accept 15% of joint assets, no alimony, and she'll take responsibility for her own legal fees. Why the sudden generosity? Her lawyer advised her that fighting this would only make things worse. The evidence is overwhelming, and a public trial would destroy what's left of her reputation. What about the house? You keep it. She'll take her personal belongings and her car, assuming she can keep up the payments. And the business? Entirely yours. She has no claim to it. I looked up at the house I was working on, a beautiful Victorian that the owners wanted restored to its original glory. It was the kind of project I loved, taking something damaged and making it beautiful again. "Accept the offer," I told Margaret. "Are you sure? We could probably negotiate for even less." "I'm sure. Let's end this." That afternoon, I signed the settlement papers in Margaret's office. Fiona wasn't there. Her lawyer said she was too upset to attend, but I could see her signature on the documents, shaky and uncertain. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, I realized that for the first time in months, I felt free. Not happy, exactly, but free. Free from the constant tension, the walking on eggshells, the feeling that nothing I did would ever be good enough. My phone buzzed with a text from Travis. "Heard the good news, boss. Want to celebrate at Murphy's?" I typed back, "Rain check. I have work to finish." Because that's what I did. I worked. I built things. I fixed things. I took broken, damaged things and made them whole again. It was honest work, done with honest hands, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was a different man living a different life. The business was thriving. Word of mouth about my work had spread, and I had more clients than I could handle. I'd bought out my competitors' contracts, hired 6 new employees, and moved into a larger workshop space. More importantly, I'd started dating again. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she was everything Fiona wasn't. A pediatric nurse who drove a sensible Honda and thought my work stories were interesting instead of embarrassing. She'd grown up in a working-class family, understood the value of honest labor, and never once made me feel like I needed to apologize for who I was. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months when she got an invitation that changed everything. "The Children's Hospital Foundation is having their annual gala next month," she said, over dinner at a restaurant that served great food without requiring a trust fund to afford it. "They invited me because of my work with the pediatric cancer ward." "That's great. You deserve the recognition. The thing is, it's a really big deal. All the wealthy donors will be there, plus city officials, business leaders, that whole crowd, and I was wondering if I'd go with you?" She nodded, looking nervous. "I know it's not really your scene. Sarah, I'd be honored to go with you." "Really? Because I know how you feel about those kinds of events." "I feel fine about those kinds of events. It's the people at those events who used to be the problem." The gala was held at the Riverside Convention Center, the fanciest venue in the city. I rented a tuxedo, bought Sarah a corsage, and tried not to think about the last time I'd attended a formal event with a woman I cared about. Sarah looked stunning in a navy blue dress that she'd bought specifically for the occasion, and I told her so as we walked into the convention center. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she said, adjusting my bow tie. "Very James Bond. James Bond never installed crown molding for a living. James Bond never saved a family's house from foreclosure by working for free either." That was Sarah. She saw the best in everything, including me. The gala was exactly what I'd expected. Lots of people in expensive clothes eating expensive food and writing expensive checks for a good cause. But Sarah belonged here in a way that Fiona never had. She wasn't trying to impress anyone or prove anything. She was just genuinely excited to support the hospital where she worked. We'd been there for about an hour, making small talk with doctors and donors, when I saw something that made my blood run cold. A wanted poster. It was posted near the entrance, along with several others featuring various white-collar criminals and con artists. But this one was different. This one had Fiona's face on it. "Wanted," the poster read, "in connection with multiple investment fraud schemes targeting wealthy individuals. Fiona Mallory, also known as Fiona Brandt, also known as Fiona Castellano. If you have information about this individual's whereabouts, please contact..." I stared at the poster, reading it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Sarah had appeared at my elbow, following my gaze to the poster. "That's my ex-wife." Sarah's eyes widened. "The one who had the affair?" The same one. I read the poster more carefully. According to the information provided, Fiona had been running a sophisticated romance scam, targeting wealthy divorced men through online dating sites and exclusive social clubs. She would seduce them, gain their trust, and then convince them to invest in fake business opportunities. The amounts were staggering. Over $2 million stolen from at least 8 different victims over the past 4 months. 8 victims, I said out loud. What? She's scammed 8 different men since our divorce was finalized. Sarah read the poster over my shoulder. Oh my God. It says here she's wanted in 3 different states. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the poster, my mind racing. This explained so much. Why she'd been so confident about the divorce settlement. Why she hadn't fought harder for more money. Why she'd disappeared from town so completely after everything fell apart. She'd already been planning her next move. Sir? Excuse me, sir? A security guard had appeared next to us. Did you say you know this woman? She's my ex-wife. We divorced 6 months ago. The guard's eyes lit up. Would you be willing to speak with Detective Morrison? He's been investigating this case. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a quiet corner of the convention center with Detective Morrison, a tired-looking man in his 50s who seemed genuinely excited to meet me. Mr. Mallory, you might be the break we've been looking for in this case. We've been tracking your ex-wife for months, but she's very good at disappearing. When did this start? The first reported incident was about 3 weeks after your divorce was finalized. A wealthy widower in Boston met her on an exclusive dating site. She called herself Fiona Brandt, claimed to be a successful HR executive who'd recently been widowed herself. Widowed? According to her story, her husband died in a construction accident. Very tragic, very sympathetic. I felt sick. What happened to the widower? She convinced him to invest $300,000 in a fake tech startup. When he tried to contact her after the money disappeared, he discovered that Fiona Brandt didn't exist. But she does exist. That's her real name. Well, her maiden name. Right. But she'd created an entirely fictional background. Fake employment history, fake references, even fake social media profiles going back years. Detective Morrison pulled out a tablet and showed me a series of photos. Fiona in different cities, with different men, using different names. Boston, Philadelphia, Miami, and now she's apparently working the West Coast. She's gotten very sophisticated about it. How so? She researches her targets extensively before making contact. She knows their financial situations, their family histories, their interests. She becomes exactly what they're looking for in a partner. I thought about my own courtship with Fiona, how perfectly she'd seemed to fit into my life, how she'd shared all my interests and dreams. At least, until after we were married. Detective, I think she might have been practicing this scam on me. What do you mean? I mean, I think our entire marriage was a rehearsal for what she's doing now. She studied me, learned what worked and what didn't, refined her technique. Detective Morrison leaned forward. Can you elaborate on that? I told him about the secret phone, the detailed planning for our divorce, the way she'd calculated exactly how much money she could extract from me. I told him about her obsession with wealthy men, her constant social climbing, her ability to become whoever she thought someone wanted her to be. The difference is, I wasn't wealthy enough to be worth a full scam, I concluded. I was just practice. Mr. Mallory, would you be willing to help us catch her? How? She's been using information from your marriage in her cons. Details about your business, your clients, even your personal history. She's telling these men that her late husband was a contractor, that she understands the construction business, that she has connections in the industry. She's using my life story as part of her fake identity? Exactly. And we think that might be her weakness. If we can get her to meet with someone who claims to be connected to your business, someone who can ask her specific questions about your work, you want to set up a sting operation. We want to give her enough rope to hang herself. I looked across the room at Sarah, who was talking animatedly with a group of doctors about a new pediatric wing the hospital was planning. She caught my eye and smiled, and I felt that familiar warmth that I'd never experienced with Fiona. What would I have to do? We've tracked her to Los Angeles. She's currently targeting a real estate developer named Michael Chen. Wait, Michael Chen? I know that name. You do? He's been trying to hire my company for months. Wants us to handle the renovation work on a series of luxury condos he's developing. Detective Morrison grinned. Mr. Mallory, I think you just became our secret weapon. The plan was simple but elegant. I would fly to Los Angeles under the pretense of meeting with Michael Chen about the construction contract. Chen, who was cooperating with the investigation, would arrange to have dinner with Fiona, who was calling herself Fiona Castellano and claiming to be a widow whose late husband had been a successful contractor. During dinner, Chen would mention that he was considering hiring a contractor from back east, someone who'd been highly recommended. He'd show her my business card, maybe even a few photos of my work. If Fiona was using my life story as part of her con, she'd have to react. She might claim to recognize my name, or my work, or even claim to have known me personally, and when she did, we'd have her. The key is getting her to make specific claims about your business, your clients, your personal life, Detective Morrison explained. Once she starts lying about details that only your real wife would know, we'll have proof that she's been using your identity as part of her criminal enterprise. And then we arrest her for fraud, identity theft, and about 6 other felonies. I thought about Fiona sitting in that dive bar 6 months ago, crying into her martini about how her life had fallen apart. I thought about the cruel things she'd said at her birthday dinner, the months of planning to destroy my life, the way she'd tried to take everything I'd worked for. And then I thought about the 8 men she'd scammed since then, men who'd trusted her with their hearts and their money, men who were probably sitting somewhere right now wondering how they'd been so completely fooled. When do we leave for Los Angeles? 3 days later, I was sitting in a restaurant in Beverly Hills, wearing a wire and watching through the window as Fiona walked up to the valet stand. She looked different. Her hair was darker, cut in a more sophisticated style. She was wearing clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent, and she carried herself with a confidence that I'd never seen during our marriage. She looked successful. She looked wealthy. She looked like she belonged in a place like this. She also looked like a completely different person from the woman I'd married. Michael Chen was already at our table, reviewing the plan one more time. Remember, I'm just a businessman considering a construction contract. I mention your company, show her your card, see how she reacts. And I'm just here as a potential contractor, meeting with a potential client. Right. You don't know her? You've never seen her before? Through the window, I watched Fiona give her name to the hostess. Even from a distance, I could see her charm at work. The smile, the laugh, the way she made the hostess feel like they were old friends. She's good at this, I murmured. The best ones always are, said Detective Morrison through my earpiece. The hostess led Fiona to Chen's table, and I watched them greet each other like old friends. Fiona was animated, touching Chen's arm, laughing at something he said. She looked genuinely happy to see him. It was a masterful performance. She's sitting down, I reported quietly. They're looking at menus. Give them 10 minutes to get settled, then make your entrance, Morrison said. I spent those 10 minutes watching my ex-wife work her magic on another victim. Even knowing what she was doing, even knowing it was all an act, I had to admit she was impressive. She had Chen completely captivated, hanging on her every word. Time, Morrison said. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked into the restaurant. The hostess seated me at a table with a clear view of Chen and Fiona, close enough to hear their conversation, but far enough away to seem coincidental. So tell me about this contractor you're considering, Fiona was saying. You said he came highly recommended? Chen handed Fiona my business card, Ethan Mallory, renovation specialist, and I watched the mask slip for half a second. Her hand trembled, her eyes widened, then she forced a smile and started spinning the same old lie about her late husband, borrowing my projects like they were her own. Chen played along. "I'd like to meet Mallory before I decide." Then he pointed. "Actually, I think he's right over there." Fiona turned, our eyes locked, and the color drained from her face. She tried to excuse herself, stood up too fast, spilled red wine across the tablecloth, and walked hard toward the back hallway. Not the restroom, an exit. "She's running," I said. In my earpiece, Morrison confirmed units were in place. Fiona glanced back once, and for the first time I saw it plainly: fear, raw and unfiltered. She broke into a run. She didn't make it 10 steps past the hallway. 2 plainclothes officers were waiting. Handcuffs, rights read. The woman who'd shared my bed and my life was loaded into a police car and swallowed by Los Angeles traffic. And I felt nothing. Morrison appeared beside me. Perfect. Her recognition was the reaction we needed. Now she goes to trial. The trial went national. 15 years, millions traced, victims listed, and buried in the article was the line that hit hardest. My marriage had been her rehearsal, 3 years of my life used as practice for bigger cons. At breakfast, Sarah asked how I felt. "Relieved," I said. "Not because she's gone, because now I know it was never something I could have fixed. The woman I thought I married never existed." Sarah took my hand. Months later, I proposed in my workshop, sawdust on both of us, tools on the bench, something real in the air. The wedding was small, quiet, honest, at the home I built with my own hands. People talked. I let them, because the ending wasn't revenge, it was truth, then peace, then a life that finally felt like mine again.